Well, Michael Geoghegan, political consultant based in Victoria, British Columbia, is with us now. Mr. Geoghegan, two Toronto area Conservative Party candidates jettisoned by the party for questionable behaviour today, just as the party's leader, Stephen Harper, was preparing to campaign today in Toronto. I wonder what sort of thoughts does this conjure up for you?
It's obviously a bad day on the campaign trail for Stephen Harper. It also, I remember a satirical Onion magazine article from 2012, every potential presidential candidate for 2040 eliminated due to Facebook. So, this issue and this hit NDP, Liberals, and Conservatives, where social media, if there's anything that's a little bit controversial, unfortunately nowadays that's enough to get a candidate fired. And so it's a problem that I don't know how as a society we're going to wrestle with, because are we going to basically eliminate anyone who's ever said or done anything controversial online? If so, we're eliminating a huge percentage of Canadians from being eligible for political office.
It's been observed that Canadians generally won't be paying real attention to the party's campaigns and coming election, of course, until after this Labor Day weekend. Do you think what's gone on so far will stick with people?
Well, obviously the Mike Duffy trial, and then having, as you said, two candidates, and here it is, Labor Day Monday, it's obviously lends itself in terms of the overall impression. And the overall impression is that the Conservative campaign, so far, if it hasn't been for bad luck, they wouldn't have had any luck at all.
Let's shift to the refugee and migrant crisis. Today, Liberal Party leader Justin Trudeau echoed NDP leader Tom Mulcair's call last week for the party leaders to work together to enable Canada to better help a flood of refugees fleeing African and Middle East countries. Prime Minister Harper today, though, appears to prefer maintaining the course and policies that his party already has in place. I wonder whose position on this is the public most likely to support?
Well, I think in a lot of cases, the public is more likely to support the opposition party's positions. The problem is that, you have two opposition parties that, the latest polls suggest the NDP are narrowly in first place. The Liberals have now squeaked ahead of the Conservatives. So for people who are upset with Harper, for people who disagree with his views in terms of dealing with the refugee crisis or other matters, essentially there's two viable parties to vote for. And what I would imagine Prime Minister Harper is hoping for is that the split is one where, they're able to hang on to enough of their vote that they can squeak up the middle. But right now, it is looking very difficult for the Conservatives, as the latest polls show them, falling into third place.
Finally, I want to talk to you about strategic voting, which is something that at least one of the unions has suggested Canadian voters do come October. Strategic voting is not something that's particularly new. Explain, though, what it is for people who don't know and how much of an effect it's likely to have in this election.
Well, I think essentially what strategic voting is essentially, if polls are to be believed, you look at an area like Ontario where if you're not a fan of the Conservative Party, the Liberals tend to be doing better, doing a bit stronger than the NDP. However, if you're in Quebec and you're not a fan of the Conservatives, the NDP are out, very much in first place. In British Columbia, the Liberals are in second place. The NDP are in first place. So how do you be strategic there when the Conservatives look like they're headed for third place? So, strategic voting is one of those things where it's easy to say, it's much, much harder to accomplish in the real world. So I think you're going to see a number of situations where we're going to see three, and here on Vancouver Island with the Greens, perhaps even four-way splits. And I think some of the results are going to be a little bit surprising. So
bottom line, would you suggest people who are talking about voting strategically in this election, would you advise that?
I think what I would do is I would say is vote for the candidate you like the best, and or vote for the candidate representing the political party that you like the best, and let the results fall where they may. I think that's the best advice, so that regardless of whether or not your candidate loses or wins, you feel relatively good about how you cast your vote.
Good advice. Michael Geoghegan, political consultant based in Victoria, British Columbia. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you, sir.